You're the one can't look away.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the brand new Netflix monster show, the third season of Monster, and this one is the Ed Gein story. It stars Charlie Hunnam as Ed Gein, Laurie Metcalf, Susanna Son, Vicky Krieps, and Tom Hollander. Right, okay, this is an 8-episode season. Focuses on the life of Ed Gein, the infamous killer, who has had many influences in the world of movies. He inspired Psycho, he inspired the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Silence of the Lambs. So he is a very famous killer, as many of them tend to be. Now, I've been looking forward to this. I've enjoyed the first 2 seasons of Monster, the first one especially. The second one I did enjoy, but I thought it didn't feel as though it was as good as the first one. But I've been very excited for this one because they've really gone deep here on this one, focusing on, a really infamous killer, Ed Gein, that carries that almost, I don't know, urban myth with him, the Ed Gein story. Now, I thought this, in some ways, was really excellent, and in other ways, really extravagant, self-indulgent, and non-factual. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure in both Season 1 and Season 2 they took creative liberties. It feels like they took a lot of creative license on this one, especially when you do your research on Ed Gein. He was officially, really, he admitted to killing 2 people, and they could really only prove one of them. The people that it shows him killing in this show, none of those were ever proven. There was no evidence at all to suggest he did it. His brother, a babysitter, the 2 men in the woods. So it takes a lot of creative license with Ed Gein and his story here. But it doesn't change the fact that this is a roller coaster of emotions watching this show. It's deeply dark, dingy, cringy, and hard to watch at times. I mean, literally, within the first 5 minutes, if you can get past the first scene, really, in this show, which is a scene where he essentially is asphyxiating himself, wearing ladies' underwear, his mother's underwear, and doing things to himself, if you can get through that scene, you've got a chance of making it through this show. If you can't get through that scene, then it gets worse, trust me. So they set out the stall very quickly in this show, and they do not hold back. Prepare to watch some pretty disturbing stuff here. Now, when it focuses on Ed and his relationship with his mother, his clear mental health issues, his need to dig up corpses and skin them and try and recreate his mother and all this kind of stuff, that I think that's when this show excels. When it leads into the fantasy, where he's fantasizing about this German war criminal, this female German war criminal who got her on cartoon books and stuff, he may well have had a fascination with the atrocities in the Second World War by the Nazis. But the show leans very heavily into that. Very heavily. And I suspect that, again, a lot of creative license was used. So when they start leaning into those sort of things, the fantasy side of things, the film starts losing its focus. I mean, the show starts losing its focus. But when it leads into the more grounded storytelling version of Ed, then it's much better. And I don't mind so much that they take creative license here and there. It may well be suspected that he killed these other people, and I don't mind the show showing that he probably did it, but there's no evidence to suggest he did. But like I said, the leaning into the fantasy side of things, I found that really, really difficult. And personally, I found the last 3 episodes of this to be really self-indulgent, and a lot of it unnecessary. I don't think we needed the last 3 episodes. Maybe, certainly the last 2 episodes. Because like I say, it leans very heavily into fantasy. It leans very heavily into his influence of other serial killers, and it has them talking. It even has this weird scene where it quite clearly copies Mindhunter, the Netflix show, and it just leaned very heavily into that side of things. It made out that he had a lot to do with Ted Bundy being caught, and there's no evidence to suggest that. His connections to inspiring other serial killers. Again, there's very little evidence of that. They just lean very heavily into the fact that this is the guy that, according maybe to some, and certainly this show, who started this whole serial killer fascination. And there may be some truth to that, but the show doesn't really give a balanced approach to it. It basically says, yes, it is him, like it or lump it. It doesn't really give a balanced approach to that. And the film focused far too heavily on the Psycho thing, Silence of the Lambs, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Okay, they easily referenced that his story was an inspiration for those movies, but to literally reenact the process for certainly for Psycho and Texas Chainsaw, and they do dramatizations of this, that, and the other. I just thought it went overboard and it didn't need it, and it elongated the show longer than it needed to be. I felt the show could have finished and ended 2 episodes earlier, even 3 potentially. But saying that, I do feel like I'm being quite critical here. I just felt like it was a little bit self-indulgent, this, leaning into fantasy quite a lot. But at the very core of this is a career-defining performance by Charlie Hunnam. Wow. He manages to garner your sympathies, but also disgust at the same time. It's a tremendous performance by him. And there's a scene, I think it's the second to last episode, I might be wrong, where he is basically diagnosed by his doctor in the mental hospital as schizophrenic. And that sequence from Charlie Hunnam, that realization that he's ill, sort of thing, and he could take a pill and it'll make him better and all that kind of stuff. It's a heartbreaking scene, and it's done extremely well. Probably didn't happen like that at all in real life, and they clearly took creative license with that, but it was massively impactful. So what we get here, I think, is a little bit of a mixed bag. I think certainly the first 5 episodes, maybe into the 6, hit the mark mostly, for the most part. And I do think it went on a little bit too long. It was almost like, when they started it, Netflix turned around and says, right, we need 8 episodes from you. And he's like, oh, shit, I've only got enough material here for maybe 5, 6 episodes. I'll think of something. And that's kind of what it feels like a little bit. And it does feel like they've glamorized at times. There's a couple of scenes in the last episode or 2 where it absolutely, there's like a dance routine and serial killers celebrating him, in this fantasy thing that he's having. And it almost feels like, the glamorizing the whole serial killer thing. And it does leave a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth. But overall, it's a solid series. I think it's Lizzie Borden next time, which again I think will be interesting. But I hope my hope is maybe for the next one is stop worrying too much about entertaining us and worry more about giving us an accurate dramatization. I would prefer that than the glossy entertainment route that this one clearly went down. So that's my thoughts on Monster, the Ed Gein story. Some great stuff in there, but there's also a bit of a mixed bag of stuff in there as well. I think purists or these true crime people that really get a kick out of like true crime documentaries, they'll probably be horrified by a lot of what stuff is in here because it's clearly a lot of inaccuracies. So thanks for joining me for this review, guys. If you liked it, please click the like button. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and I will of course be back with plenty more content on the channel very, very soon.